The lights above hummed faintly, sterile and cold as Grace Lewis clutched the rails of the hospital bed. Sweat ran down her temple, her knuckles white as the doctor urged, "One more push, Grace. You're almost there." The room smelled of antiseptic and new life. With one final cry, her baby girl entered the world, the sound of her first wail cutting through the air like a miracle. Tears welled in Grace's eyes. Relief washed over her as they placed the tiny, wriggling body on her chest. For a moment, everything was perfect. But then, in the blur of nurses moving around, Grace noticed something odd. While one nurse cleaned the baby, another swiftly collected the placenta. She didn't just toss it away like medical waste. She sealed it carefully into a metal container marked with a barcode. Grace's vision was hazy from exhaustion, but she caught a glimpse of a label. Inventory number 4527. Her lips parted. Inventory? She tried to ask, but her voice was weak, barely a whisper. The nurse smiled tightly, almost rehearsed, before disappearing through a side door with the container. Grace blinked, trying to dismiss it. Maybe that was just protocol. Maybe she was too tired to understand. But deep down, something unsettled lodged itself in her chest. 2 days later, discharged and cradling her newborn at home, Grace replayed the scene in her mind. The way the nurse had hurried out. The barcode. The label. She mentioned it casually to her husband, Daniel. Inventory? That's probably just medical lingo. Don't worry about it, babe. You need rest. But Grace couldn't shake it. That night, as she rocked the baby to sleep, her phone buzzed. A new email. No sender name, just a blank address. The subject line, "They took something from you." Her heart thudded. She opened it with trembling fingers. The message was short, cryptic. "Check your hospital bill. Line item 442. Grace frowned, confused. But when she logged into the hospital's portal and downloaded the invoice, her stomach turned. Under miscellaneous charges was a strange entry. Code 442, biowaste disposal, $1,200. Why would she be charged over $1,000 for throwing something away? Her chest tightened. That wasn't waste. That was her baby's placenta. Over the next week, Grace couldn't let it go. While nursing her newborn, she researched late into the night. Medical journals, forums, underground blogs. And then she found it. A thread titled, "Hospitals are selling your baby's placenta, here's the proof." Dozens of anonymous mothers shared eerily similar stories. Hidden charges on their bills. Nurses whisking away placentas without explanation. And whispers of the black market, where placentas sold for millions to pharmaceutical giants, biotech labs, even elite beauty companies. Grace's breath quickened as she read. The placenta contains stem cells. Companies use it for experimental drugs, anti-aging serums, even organ regeneration. Mothers think it's waste. Hospitals know it's gold. She slammed her laptop shut, staring at her sleeping baby. Could this be real? And if it was, what else weren't they telling her? 2 nights later, Grace's phone buzzed again. This time a text message. Unknown number. Stop asking questions. Enjoy your baby. Forget the rest. Her blood ran cold. She rushed to the window. Across the street, a dark sedan sat idling. She could almost feel eyes watching her from inside. Her pulse hammered as she grabbed Daniel's arm. "We're being watched." He rubbed his temples, exhausted. "Grace, you're spiraling. Please, you need sleep." Delete the message. But Grace knew. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. Someone out there knew she had started digging. 3 days later, Grace received a new message. This one from a private email. "If you want answers, meet me. Tomorrow 9 p.m. corner of 8th and Willow. Don't tell anyone." It was signed only, M. Her stomach dropped. She didn't want to go. But she had to. At 9 sharp, Grace stood on the dark street corner, her coat pulled tight against the wind. Headlights flashed once, then a woman stepped from the shadows. A nurse. Grace recognized her instantly, the same one who had carried the placenta container out of her delivery room. The nurse's face was pale, her voice shaking. "They told us it was for science. That it saved lives. But it's not just research, Grace. They're selling it. Every placenta, every hospital in the network. Millions of dollars." Grace's mouth went dry. "Why are you telling me this?" The nurse's eyes darted around nervously. "Because I can't live with it anymore. I have proof. Documents, shipment logs. But if they find out I talked to you. She cut off, her breath hitching. From down the street, headlights appeared. A black SUV rolled slowly toward them. The nurse's face drained of color. They already know. Before Grace could respond, the nurse shoved a flash drive into her hand. Run. The SUV door burst open. Men in dark suits spilled out. One raised something metallic. A gun. Grace's scream tore into the night as the first shot rang out. The gunshot cracked like thunder. Grace's ears rang as the nurse crumpled to the ground, blood blooming across her uniform. Grace froze. Her legs screamed to run, but terror rooted her in place. The SUV's headlights bore down on her like predator eyes. Then the nurse's last words echoed in her head. Run. Clutching the flash drive tight, Grace bolted down Willow Street, her shoes slapping against wet pavement. Behind her the men shouted. One fired another shot, the bullet sparking off a metal dumpster inches from her arm. Her lungs burned. She ducked into an alley, heart hammering so hard she thought it would burst. The drive dug into her palm, slick with sweat. The gunshot still echoed in Grace's skull as she ran. The city around her blurred into streaks of light and shadow. Her chest ached, her arms trembling as she clutched the flash drive like it was her last lifeline. Behind her, the SUV's doors slammed shut. Footsteps pounded. Voices shouted her name. She ducked into a narrow alley. Trash bags split beneath her feet, the stench of rot clawing her throat. A bullet sparked off the brick wall inches from her head. She stumbled but didn't stop. Don't look back. Don't look back. Her lungs screamed for air, but her legs refused to quit. Finally, she reached her street. Her house glowed faintly, warm and safe, an illusion she knew could shatter any second. She burst through the front door. Daniel. He shot up from the couch, his face pale. Grace, what? She shoved the flash drive into his hands. They killed her. The nurse. She gave me this. Daniel, they're coming. His hands shook as he stared at the tiny piece of plastic. Who's coming? Grace's voice cracked. The hospital. Whoever's running this. They know. Daniel booted up his laptop. The folders on the flash drive seemed endless. Names. Numbers. Codes. One spreadsheet stopped them cold. Shipment schedule. Confidential. Destination. Zurich, Switzerland. Cargo. Placental stem units, 2000. Departure. September 12th. Midnight. 2000, Grace whispered, horror strangling her throat. Daniel clicked another file. Contracts, all signed by doctors and hospital executives. Some of the names were local politicians. Senator. Even a governor. Grace's skin prickled. This isn't just one hospital. It's a network. And then she saw her name. Grace Lewis. Inventory number 4527. Her vision blurred. She remembered the barcode on the container. That was her. Her baby. Catalogued like a product on a shelf. Grace, Daniel muttered, this is too big for us. We need the FBI. No, she grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. Don't you get it? If the government's involved, if they're making billions, we can't trust anyone. No one. The house was too quiet. Grace couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards made her flinch. At 3:07 a.m. it came. A faint click. The back door. Her eyes shot open. She grabbed Daniel's arm. Someone's here. They held their breath. Then footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Deliberate. Daniel grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed. Grace scooped their daughter into her arms. The baby stirred, whimpering softly. The bedroom door handle turned. Foley. Daniel swung it open, bat raised. A man in a black mask loomed in the doorway, eyes glinting like a predator's. Daniel swung. The bat cracked against his ribs. The man grunted but didn't fall. Another shadow appeared behind him. Grace screamed. She bolted for the bathroom, locking the door. From the other side, fists hammered the wood. Give us the drive, Grace. We know you have it. Her heart sank. How? How do they already know? The baby began to cry. Loud, piercing, unstoppable. Shut her up, one of the men snarled. Grace's eyes darted around the bathroom. No weapon. No escape. The tiny window above the shower. Barely wide enough. She shoved the baby's blanket through, then forced her daughter out, lowering her as carefully as shaking arms allowed. The baby wailed, landing safely on the patch of grass below. Grace scrambled next, scraping her arms raw against the frame. Behind her, the bathroom door splintered. She hit the ground, scooping up her daughter just as the door burst open. "Grace." Daniel's voice thundered inside. She turned, heart-shattering. He was being dragged by two men, blood streaking his face. "Run," he bellowed. "Go." Tears blinded her as she staggered into the night barefoot, clutching her baby. The SUV's headlights flared on the street. The engine roared. The SUV chased her like a predator stalking prey. She darted into a construction site, weaving between skeletal steel beams and piles of cement blocks. The SUV skidded to a halt. Doors slammed. "Find her." Flashlight beams cut across the site. Shadows stretched like claws. Grace pressed herself against a cold pillar, her baby trembling in her arms. Her pulse hammered so loudly she thought they'd hear it. The men's footsteps drew closer. One beam swept inches from her face. She crawled backward under a half-built stairwell. Dust coated her tongue. Then her baby cried. A sharp, desperate wail. The flashlight froze. "She's here." Panic exploded in her chest. She scrambled away, but boots thundered after her. A hand grabbed her arm, she shrieked. But the grip was firm, not violent. A man's voice hissed in her ear, "Quiet if you want to live." The stranger dragged her through a gap in the scaffolding, down into a hidden maintenance tunnel beneath the site. The noise above thundered as the men searched, unaware they had slipped below. They crouched in the darkness, Grace clutching her child so tightly her arms ached. Finally she dared to whisper. "Who are you?" The man's face was grim, shadowed, lined with exhaustion. "Name's Marcus. I used to work for them. Security." Grace's throat tightened. "For who?" He stared at her, voice low and heavy. "The hospital. The syndicate. The people who own your baby's placenta." Grace shook her head, tears streaming. "Why are they after me?" Marcus's eyes flickered to the child in her arms. "They don't just want what she was born with, Grace. They want her." The tunnel smelled of rust and damp earth. Pipes rattled overhead as Marcus guided Grace through the shadows. Her baby whimpered softly against her chest, every sound magnified in the silence. Finally they stopped. Marcus leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Grace tightened her grip on her daughter. "Tell me what's happening. Why do they want my baby?" Marcus's eyes lingered on the child before he spoke. His voice was low, edged with something like guilt. "The syndicate isn't just selling placentas for stem cells, Grace. That's just the entry point. It's how they fund everything else." Grace's pulse quickened. "Everything else?" He nodded. "They discovered something years ago. Stem cells from placentas can do more than heal. With the right modifications they can regenerate tissue, reverse aging, even grow new organs. But the real breakthrough..." He paused, meeting her eyes. "They found a way to code specific genetic markers from infants into their experiments. Which means..." Grace's throat went dry. "Which means what?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "Which means some babies aren't just donors. They're blueprints. Genetic gold mines. And your daughter..." He broke off, lowering his voice further. "She's on a list. A short list." Grace staggered back. "A list? For what?" Marcus's face was grim. "For extraction. They don't just want her placenta. They want her DNA, her cells, her life. She's worth more than you can imagine." Grace's stomach twisted, bile rising in her throat. She held her daughter tighter, the baby's tiny heartbeat fluttering against her chest. "No," Grace whispered. "No. You're lying." Marcus shook his head. "You saw the flash drive. Your baby isn't just a number, Grace. She's the product. And they will not stop until they have her." Grace staggered against the tunnel wall, her mind spinning. Could she trust Marcus? He was a stranger. A man who admitted working for them. "How do I know you're not part of this?" she hissed, clutching her baby tighter. "How do I know this isn't a setup?" Marcus's expression hardened. "You don't. But if I wanted the child, you'd already be in their hands." Silence stretched between them. Grace's breath came shallow, ragged. Then Marcus pulled something from his pocket. A worn ID badge. "Hospital security." His face, younger in uniform. "They used me to keep mothers in line," he said bitterly. Anytime a woman asked questions, anytime she noticed too much, I was the one who made sure she stayed quiet. Grace's skin prickled. So why help me? His eyes flicked to the baby. Because my wife gave birth 2 years ago. Same hospital. Same program. Our baby was stillborn. Or at least, that's what they told us. Grace's chest constricted. Marcus's voice broke. I never saw the body. Marcus stepped closer, urgency sharpening his tone. Grace, listen. You can't go home. You can't go to the police. They own the system. Your only chance is to go dark, disappear with the baby. Grace shook her head violently. Disappear? I have a husband. Daniel, her voice cracked. They took him. I can't just abandon him. Marcus's jaw tightened. If they've got him, they'll use him against you. You stay, you both die. You run, you at least have a chance. Grace's heart screamed in protest. The thought of leaving Daniel behind felt like ripping out her soul. But every instinct told her Marcus was right. They'll keep coming, Marcus pressed. And each time they'll get closer. Grace's eyes blurred with tears. She rocked her daughter gently, whispering into her hair. What do I do? Suddenly Marcus stiffened. He pressed a finger to his lips. Voices echoing through the tunnel. Flashlights bobbing in the darkness behind them. They found us, he hissed. He grabbed Grace's arm, pulling her down a side passage. Their footsteps splashed in shallow water as the shouts grew louder. Grace's heart pounded. Every muscle screamed with exhaustion, but she forced herself to keep moving, clutching her daughter tighter than ever. Finally, Marcus stopped at a rusted metal hatch. He shoved it open, revealing a ladder that stretched into blackness. Down, he ordered. Grace peered into the void. Where does it go? Somewhere they won't follow. Her stomach twisted. She didn't trust him. She didn't trust anyone. But the voices behind them were closing in. Marcus's eyes locked on hers. Grace. Decide. Now. The shouts grew nearer. A beam of light swept across the tunnel wall. Grace's pulse thundered. With no other choice, she clutched her baby to her chest and climbed down into the dark, the rungs slick beneath her hands. The hatch clanged shut above her. The darkness swallowed them whole. The ladder seemed endless. Grace's arms ached, her legs trembled, but she clung to her daughter like a lifeline. The baby whimpered softly, her tiny cries echoing in the darkness. Finally, Marcus's voice floated up from below. Almost there. Just a few more steps. Grace's feet hit damp concrete. She looked around, heart racing. They stood in a cavernous chamber, lined with old pipes and crumbling stone walls. The air smelled of mildew and oil. Marcus pulled a flashlight from his pack, the beam slicing through the dark. He motioned for her to follow. This way. As they moved deeper, Grace noticed faint symbols scrawled across the walls. Arrows, numbers, strange codes. Marcus caught her staring. Markers. This place used to be part of the city's old subway project. Never finished. The syndicate uses some of these tunnels for transport. Grace stiffened. And you're taking me deeper into their routes? Marcus's jaw clenched. No. I'm taking you where they won't expect. A blind spot. One of the few left. They turned a corner and Grace gasped. Ahead, a cluster of makeshift rooms had been built into the stone, sheet metal walls, flickering lanterns, cots lined with blankets. It wasn't empty. 3 women sat huddled on one side, each cradling a newborn. Their eyes widened as Grace entered. One of them, her face bruised, whispered, "Another one." Grace froze. What is this? Marcus's expression softened, almost pained. The ones who escaped. Like you. The women watched her cautiously as if weighing whether she was friend or threat. The oldest, maybe in her 30s, finally spoke. They told me my baby died at birth. But I heard her cry. I know I did. When I fought them, they tried to sedate me. I ran. I've been down here ever since. Another, her voice shaking, added, they said my placenta was being taken for medical waste. But I saw the doctors. They had buyers waiting. They took it straight from the room. Grace's chest tightened. Every word echoed her nightmare. The third woman looked at Grace's baby and whispered, "Don't let them mark her." Grace blinked. Mark her. The woman lifted her infant's leg. A faint scar, barely visible, crossed the baby's ankle. They cut us open for blood tests, but this This wasn't medical. It was branding. Tracking. Grace's stomach turned cold. She pulled her daughter closer, checking her skin in the dim light. Nothing yet. But how long before they tried? Marcus knelt, pulling a small black device from his bag. He flipped it open, revealing a glowing map filled with blinking red dots. Grace frowned. What is that? His voice was grim. Each dot is a baby. Every one of them tagged. Every one of them tracked. Grace's throat closed. That many? Marcus nodded slowly. That's just the city. The room went silent. The women clutched their children tighter, as if the blinking dots might suddenly reach through the screen and snatch them away. Grace whispered, "How big is this?" Marcus hesitated. Then he met her eyes. Global. Hospitals, research labs, fertility clinics. They're all connected. The syndicate isn't selling organs or placentas anymore, Grace. They're building something. Mapping bloodlines. Experimenting on entire generations. Her chest constricted, bile rising in her throat. Why? Why my baby? Marcus's voice was low. Because some children are different. Unique markers in their DNA. They're worth millions more. And your daughter. He stopped. Grace's breath hitched. Say it. Marcus's gaze hardened. She's at the center of all of it. She's not just valuable. She's a target. They'll burn the city to get her. Before Grace could respond, the ground above them shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. The sound of heavy boots echoed faintly through the tunnels. Marcus swore under his breath. They found us. One of the women clutched her baby and screamed, "No, not again. Not again." Grace's pulse spiked. She spun toward Marcus. What do we do? He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a narrow passage at the far end. We run. And this time we don't stop. But as they reached the opening, a beam of light cut across the tunnel, blinding her. A voice rang out. Smooth. Fucking. Familiar. Going somewhere, Grace? She froze. The flashlight beam seared her eyes. Grace blinked against it, heart hammering as the familiar voice echoed off the stone walls. Going somewhere, Grace? Her stomach dropped. She knew that voice. She'd heard it in delivery rooms, in quiet prenatal checkups, in the gentle way he once said, "You and your baby are in good hands, Dr. Keene." But this wasn't the man in the crisp white coat with warm eyes and steady hands. This Keene wore black tactical gear, his posture rigid, his face half hidden in shadow. A silenced pistol gleamed at his side like it belonged there, not a stethoscope. For a moment Grace couldn't breathe. Her mind reeled back to her first trimester. She remembered sitting in his office, nervous and fidgeting as he calmly explained every stage of her pregnancy. He'd smiled then, pen poised over her chart. "You're strong, Grace. And your child is special. I can already tell." At the time she thought it was encouragement. A doctor's bedside manner. But now the words replayed with venom. Not encouragement. Evaluation. Her stomach clenched. She remembered the extra blood draws. He'd said they were routine. The way he always asked about her family's medical history. How he once stared too long at the ultrasound, jaw tightening before forcing a smile. It was all there. She just hadn't seen it. Marcus shifted beside her, his voice low, tense. "Keene." The doctor tilted his head, lips curling. "Marcus. Still playing hero in the sewers, I see." His eyes flicked to Grace, then to the baby in her arms. His smile widened. "And here she is. The crown jewel." Grace's knees nearly buckled. You delivered her. You held her in your hands." Keene's expression didn't waver. "Yes. I made sure she entered this world safely. Do you think that was for you?" "No, Grace. That was for us. For what she represents." Her chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Keene stepped closer, boots crunching on gravel. The muzzle of his gun glinted under the flashlight. "Do you really think you were chosen by chance? That any of this was random?" His voice was calm, almost soothing. "From the moment you walked into my office, you were already part of the program. Every test, every checkup, every question, I was mapping her potential. Confirming her worth." Grace shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "She's just a baby." Keene's smile sharpened. "No. She's the future. Her DNA carries a sequence we've been searching for. 1 in a million. Do you understand? She's not just valuable. She's irreplaceable. Grace clutched her daughter, backing toward Marcus. But the walls felt like they were closing in. You used me, she whispered. You let me believe you cared. For the first time, Keen's voice softened, like the doctor she once trusted. I did care, Grace. I care enough to ensure your child fulfills her purpose. You can't protect her. Not from us. The best thing you can do is hand her over peacefully. Spare her the pain of running. Grace's mind flashed to the delivery room, the gentle touch, the steady hands guiding her through the hardest hours of her life. She had trusted him when she was at her weakest. And now, the same hands that once cradled her newborn aimed a weapon at them both. Behind Keen, more beams of light flickered through the tunnels. Shadows shifted, his team was spreading, circling them. Marcus cursed under his breath. They're closing in. Keen lifted the gun, steady and precise. You can't win this, Marcus. You never could. Step aside and maybe I'll forget you exist. Marcus's hand hovered near his belt where a knife glinted. His jaw was tight, eyes locked on Keen. Grace's pulse thundered in her ears. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere left to go. The survivors in the shadows whimpered, clutching their babies, terrified to even breathe. Keen's eyes narrowed, locking on Grace's daughter. She belongs to us, Grace. Don't make this harder than it has to be. And then her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message flashed across the screen. No number. No name. Just 3 words that froze her blood. He's not alone. Grace's breath caught. She looked up, and in that split second saw something that made her knees give way. A second figure stepped from the dark behind Keen. Taller. Meaner. Wearing the same tactical gear. And in his hand, another infant. The tunnel thickened with tension, every sound amplified. The drip of water, the faint shuffle of boots, the stifled cries of newborns. Grace's lungs burned as she pressed her baby close, her eyes darting between Dr. Keen's pistol and the second man holding another infant. The child's tiny fists flailed helplessly, his cries muffled by the gloved hand clamped over his mouth. Grace's gaze snapped to the shadows. One of the mothers she had met in the hideout was on her knees, sobbing silently, her face crumpling in anguish. Her baby. Keen's smile returned, cold and sharp. You see, Grace? This isn't about your child alone. You're part of something much larger. And resistance, he tilted his gun, is meaningless. Marcus shifted, his knife gleaming faintly in the light. His voice was gravel. Let the baby go, Keen. Keen chuckled softly. You've always been predictable, Marcus. Always protecting the weak, always throwing yourself into battles you can't win. But you know how this works. One child, or many. You can't save them all. Grace's heart lurched. She clutched her daughter tighter, her mind spinning. Was this the plan all along? To corner her, force her into a decision that would break her either way? Keen's eyes locked on hers. Hand me your child, Grace. If you do, the others go free. If not? His gaze flicked to the syndicate soldier holding the other baby. The man adjusted his grip, the infant whimpering louder. Then blood will spill tonight. The mothers gasped. One of them whispered, please, don't let them hurt him. Grace's legs trembled. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Her baby stirred, sensing her mother's fear. This was it. A mother's worst nightmare. Marcus leaned closer, whispering urgently in her ear. Don't listen to him. Keen doesn't bargain. If you give her up, you'll never see her again. They'll kill us all to cover their tracks. Grace's eyes burned. She wanted to believe him. But then her gaze fell on the terrified mother in the corner, watching her baby squirm in the syndicate soldier's grip. How could she choose? Her child's life, or another's? Keen's voice sliced through the silence. 10 seconds, Grace. Decide. One baby lives. One baby dies. That's the reality. He raised the pistol, counting softly. 10, 9, 8. Every second was a hammer blow in her skull. Grace's mind raced. Could she lunge at him? Could Marcus take them both? No, too many guns. Too many shadows. Her body screamed to run. Her heart screamed to protect. The mothers sobbed quietly, begging under their breath. Keen's smile widened with each count, savoring her torment. 7, 6. Grace swallowed hard. She took a trembling step forward, her baby wailing against her chest. 5. Her lips parted. The words caught in her throat. She wouldn't, But if she didn't, another innocent life would end because of her. She raised her eyes to Keen's. Her voice cracked. Please. Don't do this. 3. Marcus's muscles tensed, ready to spring. His grip tightened on the knife. He mouthed one word to her. Wait. 2. The second soldier shifted the infant in his arms. The baby's tiny cry echoed like a gunshot through the tunnel. 1. Before Keen could finish, the tunnel exploded with noise. A deafening crack echoed through the stone walls. The soldier holding the infant jerked violently and collapsed, the baby tumbling into the arms of the sobbing mother, who screamed in shock and relief. Chaos erupted. Keen spun, cursing as shadows erupted from the opposite end of the tunnel. Figures in black masks, rifles raised, flooding the passage. Marcus grabbed Grace, yanking her backward. Move. Now. But Grace's eyes locked on the masked intruders. These weren't syndicate men. Their gear was different. Their movements sharper. Tactical. Precise. One of them barked an order through a voice modulator. Secure the infants. No one leaves. Grace's blood ran cold. Whoever they weren't here to save anyone. She clutched her baby tighter as Marcus dragged her into the chaos. And then her phone buzzed again. One new message. No name. No number. Just a chilling line. You're not running from the syndicate anymore. You're running from us. The tunnel erupted in chaos. Shouts, gunfire, the sharp cries of newborns. But Grace barely heard any of it. All she could focus on was the mother who had just snatched her baby back from the dead soldier's arms. The woman collapsed to the ground, clutching her child to her chest, sobbing into his tiny neck. The raw sound of it cut through Grace like broken glass. Relief and despair, tangled into one unbearable cry. Grace staggered, clutching her own baby so tightly the little girl whimpered. She should have felt relief too. But she didn't. Because she knew, deep down, that nothing had changed. Not really. The mother looked up at her, eyes red and swollen. For a split second, gratitude flickered in her gaze. Then it hardened into something else. Something jagged. You almost gave her up, the woman whispered hoarsely. Her voice was low, shaking. You almost let them take her, just to save my child. Grace's breath caught. She wanted to explain, to scream that she would never have surrendered her daughter, not really, not ever. But the truth was there, raw and ugly. She had hesitated. For one split second she had considered it. Her throat closed. The mother turned away, rocking her infant, sobbing into the child's hair. Grace's knees weakened, shame dragging her down like lead. Her daughter stirred in her arms, a soft cry escaping her lips. Grace buried her face in the baby's hair, tears spilling hot and fast. I'm sorry, she whispered into the soft curls. I'm so sorry, baby girl. Marcus grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a rusted support beam as bullets ricocheted down the tunnel. Grace, stay with me. Eyes up. But Grace couldn't lift her head. Couldn't force air into her lungs. Everywhere she turned it was the same. Walls closing in, enemies multiplying, trust crumbling. The hospital had lied. The doctor had betrayed her. The syndicate wanted her baby. And now this new group, whoever they were, wanted the same thing. There was no safe place. No one to trust. Even Marcus. Wasn't he just another man with secrets? Another hand dragging her deeper into a war she didn't understand? Her baby wailed louder, the sound piercing through the chaos like a plea for salvation. Grace rocked her desperately, but her hands shook so violently she could barely hold steady. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wondered if maybe Keen had been right. Maybe she couldn't protect her child. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. With trembling hands she pulled it out, shielding the screen from Marcus. Another message. Same faceless sender. This time it was worse. A photo. Her hospital room the day of her delivery. She was lying on the bed, sweat-soaked and smiling weakly, her newborn in her arms. Keen was in the frame too, standing beside her, smiling down at the child. But the caption beneath it made her stomach turn to ice. You were never the mother. You were just the vessel. Grace's knees buckled. She nearly collapsed, clutching her daughter like she could fuse their bodies together and never let go. Her chest heaved as silent sobs shook her. The walls of the tunnel blurred, sound distorting, light bending. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure she could keep going. Hope, The one thing that had kept her running, fighting, clawing through every impossible moment, was gone. The tunnel thundered with gunfire, but Marcus's eyes never left Grace. He saw the way her hands trembled around the baby, the way her shoulders sagged as if the weight of the world had finally broken her spine. He saw the tears streaking down her dirt-smudged face, the hollow despair in her eyes. She wasn't the fierce mother who had clawed her way through every trap so far. She looked like a ghost, barely holding on. Marcus swore under his breath. This was dangerous, not just because of the bullets flying but because hopelessness could kill faster than any weapon. He crouched low beside her, pressing his shoulder against hers. His voice cut through the noise, rough but steady. "Grace. Look at me." He didn't. Her gaze was fixed on the floor, lips moving silently as she rocked her daughter. "Grace." He gripped her chin gently, forcing her eyes to meet his. Her pupils were wide, drowning in panic. She shoved the phone into his chest, her hands shaking. He caught it, glanced at the glowing screen, and his jaw tightened. The photo. Option. His eyes darkened. He turned the phone off and shoved it into his pocket. "They're trying to break you," he said, voice low but fierce. "Don't let them." But Grace's whisper cracked like glass. "What if they're right?" Marcus blinked. "What?" Her tears spilled faster, her voice trembling. "What if I was never meant to be her mother? What if I was just the vessel? Keen, all of them, maybe they were right. Maybe I can't protect her." The words shredded her throat as she said them. Saying it aloud felt like betrayal. But it was the truth clawing at her chest. For the first time Marcus's mask slipped. His hand tightened around her arm, harder than before, his eyes blazing with something raw. "Don't you dare say that." His voice cracked like thunder. "You carried her. You fought for her. You bled for her. Do you understand? That makes you more of a mother than anyone in their precious labs or boardrooms ever could." Grace's lip quivered. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But doubt gnawed at her. And then she saw it, just for a second, the flicker in his eyes. Fear. Not fear of the men closing in. Not fear of death. Fear of her baby. Her breath caught. She whispered, "Marcus, why are you really helping me?" He froze. The gunfire echoed. The mother screamed. But in that moment it was just the two of them. Grace's gaze bore into him, searching for an answer. And for a fraction of a second she saw it. The hesitation, the shadow crossing his face. It wasn't loyalty. It wasn't love. It was something else. Something darker. Marcus forced a tight smile, masking it as quickly as it appeared. "Because she deserves a chance," he said. But Grace heard it, the slight emphasis. "Not you both deserve a chance. Not your family. Just she." Her chest tightened. Her pulse quickened. Marcus turned away, scanning the tunnel, barking orders at the other mothers. But Grace's world had already tilted. If Marcus wasn't really on her side, then she was more alone than she'd ever been. The tunnel was too quiet. Smoke hung in the air from the last firefight, and the mothers clutched their babies in silence, listening for footsteps that never came. But Grace wasn't listening. She was staring at Marcus. Every time his eyes landed on her daughter she saw it, the flicker. Not love. Not loyalty. Something darker. Something he didn't want her to see. Finally she broke. "Why does she scare you?" Marcus stiffened. "What?" "Pie baby." Grace's voice cracked. "You look at her like she's not even human." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he crouched down, rubbing his face with both hands. When he finally spoke, his words landed like a knife. "She's not just a child, Grace. She's the one they've been waiting for. The syndicate has tried for years. Mixing, manipulating, selecting, but none survived. Until her." Grace's chest collapsed. "You knew," she whispered. "I was assigned to you," Marcus admitted, his voice heavy. "To keep you safe until she was born. To deliver their investment." Grace's tears burned hot down her cheeks. "So every time you saved me, every time you said I wasn't alone, you were just making sure their experiment survived?" Marcus flinched. "I didn't expect to care. I didn't expect to feel anything for you or her. But Grace, they won't stop. They'll burn the world for her." She clutched her baby tighter, choking on a sob. "Then whose side are you really on, Marcus?" He met her eyes, hesitated, and that hesitation was the answer. Before Grace could respond, a deep rumble shook the tunnel. Dust rained from the ceiling. A low growl of machinery echoed from the darkness. Marcus's head snapped up. His hand went for his weapon. They found us. The walls vibrated with the roar of engines. Then floodlights blazed at the far end of the tunnel, cutting through the smoke. Grace's heart dropped. Armored figures advanced, their helmets gleaming, rifles raised. At their center stood a man in a black suit, untouched by dust or fear. Dr. Callahan. His voice carried through the tunnel, amplified and calm as if this was all inevitable. "Grace," he called, "don't make this harder. You were never meant to keep her. Hand the child over and you both live." Grace froze. The betrayal in her chest burned hotter than the floodlights. Marcus shifted beside her, weapon ready. But when Callahan's cold eyes landed on him, he gave a small, knowing nod. And Marcus didn't deny it. Grace's knees nearly buckled. Her last anchor, gone. The tunnel roared with the sound of boots and engines. Floodlights washed the stone walls in blinding white, erasing every shadow Grace once trusted. Callahan stepped forward, immaculate in his black suit, a viper in human skin. His voice was soft, patient, like he was soothing a child. "Grace, you've done well. Truly. But this part of the story isn't yours to write. Hand her over. Spare yourself the pain." Grace clutched her baby so tight she thought she might crush her. Tears stung her eyes, but rage boiled hotter. "She's mine." Behind her, Marcus shifted. His rifle was raised, but Grace saw it now, the hesitation in his stance, the weight in his shoulders. He was a man caught between orders and something he couldn't name. Callahan's gaze slid to him. "Marcus," he said smoothly, "you've done enough. Step aside and I'll forget this little detour." The floodlights burned hotter. Dozens of syndicate rifles trained on Grace. Her baby whimpered softly as if sensing the storm. Grace's pulse pounded in her ears. She couldn't outrun this. She couldn't outgun them. She had only one thing left. Her will. Grace pressed her back to the tunnel wall, her breathing sharp and shallow. She looked at Marcus, her betrayer, her almost savior, and saw the flicker again. Not loyalty, not love, but fear. And maybe a chance. "Choose," she hissed through clenched teeth. "Right now. Me and her, or them." Marcus's jaw locked. His finger twitched on the trigger. Callahan smiled faintly as though he already knew the answer. "He won't choose you, Grace. He can't. He belongs to me." Grace's heart shattered again, but she lifted her chin, her voice raw with defiance. "Then I'll fight you both." The words hung in the tunnel. For a heartbeat no one moved. Then a rifle cracked. The world exploded in gunfire. Grace dropped low, shielding her baby with her body as bullets shredded the walls. Sparks rained from broken floodlights. Screams echoed as chaos swallowed the tunnel. Marcus dove beside her, firing wildly into the syndicate ranks. His face twisted, not in loyalty, not in betrayal, but in survival. Grace didn't trust him. She couldn't. But right now, with death closing in, she had no choice but to run with the devil at her side. Marcus grabbed her arm, dragging her toward a rusted service hatch half buried in shadow. "This way," he shouted over the gunfire. Grace's heart hammered. Every instinct screamed to pull away, to never trust him again. But the flood of syndicate soldiers left no other path. She clutched her baby, teeth clenched, and dove through the hatch just as the tunnel behind them collapsed in fire and stone. The hatch slammed shut behind her, sealing off the collapsing tunnel. Grace staggered forward, chest heaving, her baby's cries echoing in the suffocating dark. Beside her, Marcus raised a flashlight, its narrow beam slicing through dripping stone walls. His voice was clipped, commanding, "Keep moving." But Grace barely heard him. Because then, the walls spoke. Callahan's voice slithered through hidden speakers, smooth, unshaken. "You think this is escape? Grace, you were never just a mother. You were chosen. Your body, your bloodline, your will. Without you, she is nothing." Grace froze. Her daughter whimpered in her arms. Chosen. Her stomach twisted. The syndicate didn't just want her baby. They wanted both of them. The tunnel widened. Floodlights snapped on. And the chamber ahead was crawling with syndicate soldiers. Rifles raised. No way out. Marcus lifted his gun. But Grace shoved him aside. Her eyes burned with tears and fire. Her voice trembled, but it carried like thunder. "They'll never take you. Not while I'm alive." Then she ran. A mother's scream tore through the chamber as Grace charged into the light, clutching her baby like a shield. Gunfire erupted. Sparks showered stone. The chamber roared with chaos. And then, an explosion. When the smoke cleared, bodies littered the ground. Lights flickered. Dust choked the air. But Grace was gone. And so was her child. Back in the main tunnel, Callahan stood calm among the wreckage. Soldiers scrambled, shouting. But he only smiled. "She's stronger than I thought," he murmured. "Good. Let her run." His eyes gleamed as he turned away. Because the real test begins now. If this story gripped you, imagine the next. Collision. Hit that like button, subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the twists, the betrayals and the secrets we uncover. Here, your support keeps these stories alive.